Now that you know the interface and some general formatting of Excel, and we've done functions, we've used relative and absolute referencing, the last thing that I'd like to introduce to you all is plotting. So when you're going to plot information in Excel, you're going to go into Insert, and then you have some options for some different charts. We're going to use the general scatter plot. A lot of times students will choose this insert line or area chart. That's not the chart that we want to use. We do not know the relationship between our independent and our dependent data. We're trying to see what that relationship is, and so we're always going to use a scatter chart. In this class and any of your classes, most of your classes, you're going to use scatter chart. So I'm going to click scatter chart. It opens up this blank window. Notice up here on my ribbon interface, if I click into the chart, it moves me to a chart design tab, and it allows me to do specific things for the chart. I'm going to show you the more brute force type way of doing graphing. If you highlight this data, you might automatically be able to get a chart to pop up, but I want to show you the way that works every time, regardless of how you have your data put into Excel. So I have my chart open. I'm going to click select data. It opens up a window and allows me to select data. I'm going to add a series of data to my chart. I'm going to name it according to my X and Y axis. My X axis is going to be my resistance values. This X axis is what we call the independent axis. The Y axis is always the dependent axis. The dependent axis is going to be my current values. So I'll have my independent axis with my X is going to be resistance. So I have resistance as my X and current as my Y. You always title your graphs dependent versus independent variable. So we have current in amps versus resistance in ohms. You should take note of this. This is very important. Anytime you're told to graph something and it says blank versus blank, you automatically know what your x-axis and what your y-axis is. You automatically know your y-axis is your dependent variable, which is in this case current, and your x-axis is your independent variable, which is resistance in this case. You're going to highlight your x values. Our x values are our resistance values. And then you're going to highlight your y values. Now notice how it automatically has this equals curly bracket 1 in there. That's a default setting. You want to delete that. Don't leave it in there. Delete it. And then highlight the current values that you want it to graph. Hit OK. And you can see that it automatically has your values on your graph. Now you can do some formatting with this. Notice you have your chart title. That's definitely something that you want. When you click on your graph, if you have one of the later updates of Microsoft Excel, you can click this plus sign. It gives you some quick chart elements that you can add. You absolutely always want to have axes titles. You always want to have those titles. Never put a chart without an axis label. So this is going to be resistance in ohms. And again, you can go up to your symbols and add that in there as an omega. And then this segment here is going to be current in amps. And there's some things that you can also do. You can do some formatting. So if you click this paintbrush, you can do some pre-formatted styles. You can also, when you click on your chart, you'll have format chart area. If that doesn't pop up, you can just right click your chart and click format chart area, and then it'll come up on the side. You can do some different things like clicking on the specific markers. You can change the marker. You can look over here. It gives you a line versus marker. You never want to have a line on here. You don't want to connect these data points. This is raw data that we collected. We don't know any values in between these raw data. So don't draw any lines. So I'll always leave that as no line unless otherwise told. You can change the marker style. Maybe we want the marker options. Maybe we want it to be a triangle and we want the size to be really large, or we wanted it to be really small, or we want to change the color. So play around, click some different colors, click some different things that you want to do with it. You have the fill. We can make it a different color with the fill. So play around with the formatting of the graph. Maybe you want to add a second piece of information on this graph. Maybe we want to add for 6 volts. So I'm going to add 6 volts here as with my voltage, and I'm going to do current 2, and I'm going to say equals this. I'm going to lock it in. A quick key for locking it in, if you wanted to do the absolute referencing, if you just do F4, it automatically puts the dollar signs before the column and before the row. divided by, and I'm going to click my resistance, my first resistance value, and then I'm going to calculate my current for 6 volts for the different resistances. And now I have this new piece of information that I might want to graph. So maybe I want to graph 2 different pieces of information on the same chart. So I can go back here, click my plot, go to chart design, and I can click select data. And now I can add a new set of data. I'm going to call this current for 6 volts. I'm going to select my X values. Again, they should be the same resistance values. Then remember, I'm going to delete this information here that's in my Y values. I'm going to highlight the specific Y values that are associated with the 6 volts. And then I'm going to hit OK. Notice now my title here doesn't really make sense. When I had one piece of information, I could name the series data the same as the chart title, but I don't really want it to be that. I want that to be current for 5 volts, so I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to change my chart title to current for 5 volts. I'm not changing my X and Y values because those should stay the same. I'm going to hit OK. Notice when I added that second piece of information, it removed my chart title because it was using my series name for my chart title. So I'm going to click this plus sign again. I'm going to add a chart title, and y'all should know, take a second, pause, tell me what my chart title should be. Remember, it's dependent current versus my independent axis, current versus resistance. And now I have 2 pieces of information on here, so I should probably also add my legend. And so notice how it has the legend. Now you can format that again. You can move that here. You can make this a little bit larger. You can put this down at the bottom or the top, wherever you want to kind of make more sense. You might also want to do some formatting. You see how it has nothing between 0 and 0.01. You might want to go here, click this axis here, and you can notice how when you click the axis, it added this bar graph on the side for format axis. You can click that and it gives you options to change some different things. So you can do axis options. You can set a minimum. Maybe let's set the minimum of 0.01. And you can change the major units. You can add tick marks. So maybe we'll have major tick marks. We'll do them as cross tick marks. You can do some labels, some numbering. You can change the labels to be high or low or next to the axis. You can do some different formatting techniques. And so I just encourage you, when you click on something, just look what pops up, click on it, look at your text options. You can change different things, axis options, and just experiment with it. As you're playing around with Excel and learning how to use it, don't get frustrated. Excel is so powerful, and there's so many resources available to you in Excel. Google is a huge resource. I always Google things in Excel. If I'm trying to figure out how to do something in Excel, I'll just Google it, and there's always an answer. You'll learn by doing, so the more you do, the more you're going to learn, so just click around. If you make mistakes, you can always press Control Z, so don't be afraid to make those mistakes. You can always undo.